Welcome back, everybody, to the NCAA Next Up series here on NCAA Football 14, where we follow the college football stars of today and the NFL stars of tomorrow through the 2022 college football season. And this entire season as a whole has been one wild ride so far, and it's about to get even crazier today. So buckle your seatbelts now, because it's about to get real. So in the last episode, we went through weeks 4, 5, and 6. A lot of crazy games went on. We found out which teams were frauds, cough, Texas, and which teams were for real. And we've really gotten a gauge at who the top teams are in college football entering this middle point of the season, where we have a huge slate of games here for weeks 7, 8, and 9 to talk about today. Certainly the craziest episode we have had up to this point. So as we review where we are going into week 7, I do want to look at the AP polls, the conference standings, the Heisman Watch, and whatnot. Oklahoma is currently number 1. They just dropped 73 points on Texas. They look like the best team in the country. The other undefeated teams at the top include Auburn, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Florida State. And then you have your one-loss teams here like Alabama, Pitt, Clemson, even some 2-loss teams up here such as Georgia. We had a number of upsets in the last episode, and we're going to have plenty more today. It should be a lot of fun as the Pac-12 is completely falling apart. They have nobody in the top 25. The Big 12 has been interesting. UCF has been a pleasant surprise. Currently, Kate Hutchinson is the favorite for the Heisman, with Masaru Lee, Elijah Bryant, Margot Brumley, and Benjamin McKenzie in the race. And then here are the conference standings. Plenty of Group 5 teams to watch out for. Tulane has not lost a game. South Alabama has not lost a game. Middle Tennessee State has not lost a game. Army is 5-0. I'm pretty sure those are the only undefeated non-Power 5 teams at the moment, and we could see all of those teams continue to rise in the rankings if they play as well as they have been. The SEC, ACC, and Big Ten are going to continue to be just grueling conference games with so many talented teams in those conferences as we look at the Week 7 schedule. A lot of big in-conference games here. Obviously, the one that stands out the most is Tennessee and Auburn. Tennessee's number 4, Auburn's number 2. Both of those schools are 5-0. They're two of the youngest teams in the SEC, and I didn't really think they would be two of the best teams in the SEC in comparison to teams like Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, who are ranked lower than them currently. A big prove-it game for teams like USC, Michigan, North Carolina, and then both South Carolina and Arkansas. That SEC matchup really intrigues me. South Carolina and Arkansas both struggled out the gate, but they've been playing a lot better since. They both have a bunch of big wins on their resume. And then we finish off with the game of the week between Miami and undefeated Florida State. Let's start off in Morgantown, West Virginia with some Big 12 action. Baylor and West Virginia opened up the season as the favorites in the Big 12 Conference. Baylor will be without starting quarterback Forrest Holloway today. He bruised his shoulder recently, will be out for a couple of weeks. Not to mention Baylor is also without their 2-star senior receivers, Monte Ford, who's out for the year, and Kyle Alexander, who's practically out for the year. So it's tough sledding right now down in Baylor, hence why they've been a little bit disappointing this season, ranked number 23rd in college football. West Virginia's been a little bit disappointing too. They've got a big opportunity to show what they can do here in the rain against Baylor, and their offense got right to work early on. Quarterback Jose Alvaro had a really strong performance, and senior running back J.K. Jordan had a nice day as well, scoring this touchdown early in the first half. Baylor was led by one of their backup running backs, Jennings Holloway, the younger cousin of quarterback Forrest Holloway, who of course did not play in this game and was injured. Jennings Holloway had a career performance for the Bears, and their star running back Isaac Stokes was very solid as well. But ultimately, West Virginia's passing game was a little bit too much. Jose Alvaro had a phenomenal game in the air and on the ground as well. Alvaro's a surprisingly good runner. He's built really well. He's a tank at the quarterback position. And ultimately, Alvaro led the Mountaineers to the win over the Baylor Bears. Got to assume Baylor drops out of the top 25, and West Virginia would actually take Baylor's spot at 23. Alvaro threw for 2 touchdowns in the air. J.K. Jordan had a nice game on the ground. And Antrell Anderson, the sophomore receiver, finished with 211 yards. Matt Moore, the starting quarterback for Baylor, really struggled. They ran the ball well, but ultimately were not able to get the job done. A big opportunity for the Trojans of the University of Southern California to prove themselves here against Iowa. The Hawkeyes are ranked 21, but they only have one win this year. USC only has one loss, and I want to see if the Trojans are for real. And the answer early on was yes. They were hanging in there for most of this game with Iowa. Running back Patrick Dauphren had a really solid performance once again for the Trojans. And this was really a back-and-forth game between both teams. Iowa had a very solid day offensively. Senior quarterback Terry Vilza threw the ball quite well for the Hawkeyes. And ultimately, this touchdown from running back Chu put Iowa up by 6 late in the fourth, with USC drive down the field for the win. Quarterback Scotty Kimbrell and wide receiver Hot Rod Pryor got working early on this possession. Kimbrell and Pryor are both sophomores, two very young players on this USC team, and they both had huge possessions here on this final drive of the game for the Trojans. And then ultimately, Kimbrell would connect deep downfield with his tight end, Will O'Neal, for the game-winning touchdown, and USC would upset Iowa 31-30. The Trojans hop into the top 25. They are now ranked 22nd in college football. I was high on USC going into the year. I had them as a real sleeper, and they have proven me right up to this point. Texas has certainly not lived up to expectations. They're 3-3. They just allowed 73 points a week ago against Oklahoma. Now they face off against Kentucky, who started the year off red hot, but they have cooled down since. Kentucky ran the ball down Texas' throats today. Benny Dixon, the junior running back, had a great game on the ground, and quarterback Isaiah Gordon was very solid as well, throwing for 4 touchdowns. Texas' offense was as good for most of the game. Benedict Sparrow has certainly had his up and down moments throughout the year, but he did have some really good throws in this ball game. Texas ran the ball pretty well again today. Amadeo Kalu had a nice game out of the backfield for the Longhorns, but ultimately this late interception from quarterback Benedict Sparrow would eventually plague the Longhorns. Kentucky would march down the field off of the interception. Isaiah Gordon with a great throw here for a touchdown over to Cassius Morris. And ultimately, Texas would not be able to come back. Kentucky with a big fourth quarter. They win 38-21, hopping into the top 25. Isaiah Gordon threw for 4 touchdowns today for Kentucky. Benedict Sparrow had another pretty mediocre game. He currently leads college football in interceptions. Now the game of the week. Tennessee heads down to Jordan-Hare Stadium to go up against the Auburn Tigers. I was very excited to watch Tennessee quarterback Benjamin McKenzie today. I wanted to see if the moment was too big for him, and we were able to tell pretty early on. The answer was yes. McKenzie was intercepted on the second play of the game by Auburn safety Kalen Ingram, and the Tiger offense really had a strong performance today. Junior quarterback Sidney McDonald did not look like the moment was too big for him, connecting on a strike here with senior wide receiver A.J. Redico for the touchdown. McDonald would later connect with tight end Samuel Armburster for a score, and the Tigers ran it very well in this game. They have one of the best backfields in the country. Jean-Robert Gabriel had a great game on the ground for Auburn, and of course, Kiki Rodriguez III might be the most explosive back in all of college football. Auburn takes this one home 40-20. Your final score, Auburn moves up to number 1 in the AP Top 25. Sidney McDonald with 2 touchdowns and nearly 300 yards. Gabriel and Rodriguez combining for around 200 yards. A.J. Redico was very good in the air, and Auburn's defense was really impressive today. Benjamin McKenzie was just not good. 11 of 26, 2 interceptions. The moment wasn't that too big for him. Penn State heads to the Big House to take on number 24 Michigan. Both of these teams have underperformed here in the Big Ten and are looking for a big win to keep themselves in the top 25. Penn State looked pretty sharp early. Sophomore wide receiver Shai Jones-Porter had another solid day, but it quickly went downhill for the Nittany Lions. Junior quarterback Bartholomew Blount really started the season off slowly, but he has been playing very well over the past few weeks for the Michigan Wolverines. He is a threat not just as a passer, but as a runner as well. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in college football, and he showed that once again here today against Penn State. And Michigan's dynamic running back duo of Charles Wiggins and Casey Aceron both had promising performances as well. A dominant win for the Wolverines. They take this one home 52-14. Michigan moves up to 17, while Penn State, being under 500, surprisingly sticks around in the top 25 at number 25, despite allowing like 250 yards of rushing at least to the Michigan offense. Bryce Evans was a little bit inconsistent, and although Shai Jones-Porter was very good, the rest of the team not so much. We've got a top 10 matchup here. North Carolina going to Heinz Field to take on Pitt. Both of these teams have 1 losses. They cannot afford another one. However, UNC just lost their starting quarterback for the season. A couple of weeks ago, sophomore Graham Fisher suffered a season-ending broken elbow, and his backup is another sophomore in Jameer Stewart, who obviously is not as good of a player as Fisher, but he does have a lot of weapons, and the Jameer Stewart hype train, I think, is in full effect right now. North Carolina's offense was great today. Running back Igby Prince had a great performance. And Jameer Stewart looked really good. He did not look like a backup quarterback. He looked like a starting caliber player at the position. Along with 2 scores from Igby Prince, UNC was able to roll through Pitt and shock the Panthers. North Carolina certainly will stay in the top 10 and keep their championship hopes alive, but they certainly take a hit without their starting quarterback the rest of the way. As for Pitt, they lose their second game, and I think 2 losses in the ACC means you're pretty much done. Also, what a catch there by Rambo Lumpkins with one hand. So North Carolina would win 38-17. They jump up to number 6. Pitt goes down to number 12. Not a great performance here for senior Jonah Molawire, who had huge expectations going into the season. He was certainly outperformed by Jameer Stewart, who had a phenomenal game throwing the football in this one for the Tar Heels. Next up, we have a game I'm very excited about. South Carolina going up against Arkansas. The Gamecocks are ranked 13. The Razorbacks are in at 14. Both of these teams really underperformed early in the season, but they both won some big games and find themselves here in a similar spot as each other. So Arkansas lost their starting running back to injury pretty early in the season. Their backup, Cannon McMullen, is really good. He does not like to be tackled. I think that's really one way to describe his game. He is a break tackle machine, absolutely running it down South Carolina's throats. However, the Gamecocks stayed in this game for quite a while. Sophomore quarterback Marco Prince had a very solid performance. Him and senior wideout Bryson Smith have quite the tandem together. However, once Arkansas's passing game really got going, South Carolina never really stood a chance. Senior quarterback Jackson Kayuma was great today, and that catch right there pretty much describes the game here for Arkansas. I mean, their offense was just so impressive in this game, running the ball, throwing the ball. I think Jackson Kayuma's draft stock has really improved over the recent weeks as Arkansas wins 38-24. Kayuma, 3 touchdowns and 3 incompletions, but he wasn't even the star of the show. It was Cannon McMullen who ran for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everybody got the love on the Arkansas offense receiving-wise. Marco Prince had some good throws, but he was overall pretty inefficient for the most part. Nebraska heads to Ohio State to take on the number 3 ranked Buckeyes. There just feels like there's something off about this Ohio State team. They just feel fraudulent to me, but they've won all of their games. So I can't really be doubted until proven otherwise. This matchup ended up being very exciting down to the wire. Ohio State was led by their talented running back Emmanuel Cashmere, who had a great game on the ground, probably his best performance of the season. However, Nebraska's offense stood toe-to-toe with them. Jeffrey McCoy connects here with senior receiver Lincoln Presley. Presley was unbelievable today for Nebraska. He might have been the best player on the field. And Jeffrey McCoy was very impressive as well in the pocket, making plays, rushing for touchdowns. Nebraska led by as much as 10 late in the game, but the Buckeyes responded. Marco Brunley with a great throw here in the end zone to cut the lead to 3. And ultimately, Ohio State would tie the game off of the field goal at the end of regulation, bringing it to overtime. Nebraska started with the ball, and McCoy was intercepted by Jameer Jefferson Jr., positioning the Buckeyes to win the game pretty easily. And that they did. Mookie Davis walks in the end zone. Typical Cornhusker choke as Ohio State wins it 34-28, scoring 17 points in the final few minutes of the game, despite a pretty poor performance from quarterback Marco Brunley. Ohio State was led by their run game and their defense. Jameer Jefferson was great with 2 interceptions, including the one that pretty much sealed the game for them. I thought Jeffrey McCoy was pretty good for Nebraska, and wide receiver Lincoln Presley was phenomenal. TCU heads down to Central Florida to take on the Knights. Both of these teams are on opposite sides of the country, yet they're in the same conference. College football in 2022. This game once again showed us that UCF is legit. Bay Morant connected with sophomore wide receiver Jensen Young here for a score. Their running back, Givey and Atwater, is really good as well. The Horned Frogs hung around in this game. They only lost by 7, but I think UCF played better than the score suggested. The Knights are now the 7th-ranked team in the country, and they look like the favorites in the Big 12 Conference. UCF opened up the season unranked, but now they look like they could really make a run from college football playoff. Missouri heads down to Georgia to take on the Bulldogs. Although Missouri's ranked higher, I feel like they're definitely the underdog here today against Georgia. Missouri certainly gave Georgia a really strong fight. I thought the Tigers' offense was pretty impressive in this game. Shiloh McDuff is having a phenomenal senior season, and he is definitely improving his stock at the quarterback position. He had some really nice throws, particularly in the first half, but Georgia's pass rush was just too much. Tykeem Rogers, Daniel Truchon, Willie Brodeur, Grant Rambo. So many talented defensive players in the Georgia front seven. Many of these guys are underclassmen, and they are really making plays here in the backfield. Shiloh McDuff, his one big weakness is navigating the pocket, and it showed today. On the other side of the ball, Clyde Williamson had another phenomenal performance as he continues to cement himself not just as the top quarterback in this draft class, but the likely #1 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Williamson entered the season with a ton of hype, and for some players, that hype is hard to meet. But Williamson has not only met the expectations, but he has completely exceeded them. Georgia takes it home 38-28. Again, a strong fight from Missouri. But Clyde Williamson's too good. He threw 4 more touchdowns today. Georgia ran the ball well enough. Quentin Pearson was great. Spencer was great. And then their defense. So many sacks. So many different players who had the ability to get in the backfield and wreak havoc. When Shiloh McDuff was not under pressure, he had some good throws. And Missouri had 200-yard rushers. But ultimately, they were not able to get the job done. And the final game for Week 7, Miami faces off against Florida State. The Seminoles are undefeated. They're the #5 team in the nation, but they will be without their starting quarterback today, Jacob King, who's probably going to be back next week, but he's not going to play today. But it's evened out because Miami will also be without their starting quarterback, Scooter Young Jr. Dennis Reed will play QB today for the Seminoles, and it'll be Brandon Connor under center for Miami. Both players are redshirt seniors. Both offenses looked surprisingly good in the first half. Brody Kluge was very solid for the Seminoles before injuring himself in the second quarter. He did return later in the game, thankfully, but Florida State's offense wasn't exactly the same once he was out of the game. But when he was in, he made a huge impact. Miami's offense was decent enough as well to start the game off. I thought Brandon Connor was solid enough. Tim Johnston had 2 interceptions for the Miami defense today. And middle linebacker Duck Chambers for Florida State was all over the field in this one. He had 10 tackles, 3 for a loss, a sack, and a fumble forced. The game was tied at 17 going into halftime, but in the second half, it was like both teams forgot how to play offense. Florida State had a nice little drive here in the fourth quarter, which ultimately led them to kick in a field goal to take a 3-point lead. And those were the only points scored in the second half. Florida State avoids the upset bid as they win this one 20-17 and remain undefeated and jump up to #4. Senior backup quarterback Dennis Reed was not great in this one, but the rest of the offense did their job in order to win the game here and improve to 6-0. But it was the defense who really won him this game. As I said, middle linebacker Duck Chambers was great. Brandon Connor was okay in this game. He wasn't horrible, but he wasn't great either. And obviously Miami's defense was very good as well, but they could not do enough to hold on to the win. Looking at some other top 25 games around the country, Middle Tennessee State barely escapes UTEP. Tulane is now ranked. They beat USF. Oklahoma steamrolls through the now 0-7 LSU Tigers. Along with that game, Florida beats Vanderbilt pretty easily. South Alabama is now in the top 25. Alabama beats Texas pretty easily, 45-29. And then some other games around the rest of college football. Minnesota upset by Northwestern. The Gophers are outside the top 25 for the first time all year. UAB gets upset. I was kind of high on them, but they've kind of disappointed me lately. Some good in-conference wins for Iowa State, Kansas, and Cincinnati in the Big 12. Fresno State beats Mississippi State. Those two teams continue to be very weird. Purdue is proving to be quite fraudulent. They used to UConn. Connecticut's actually not that bad this year. Rutgers demolishes Illinois. Rutgers is 4-1. They are legitimately good. Oregon defeats Utah. The Ducks get back on the win column. Virginia upset by Maryland. Notre Dame barely squeaks away against Boston College. Wisconsin now 3-0 in conference as they beat Indiana 27-14. And my Duke sleeper pick is continuing to look better by the day. They beat Wake Forest. Syracuse barely beats NC State. Syracuse has been very disappointing this year. I had higher expectations for them. As we look at the top 25 going into Week 8, Auburn jumps Oklahoma for the number 1 spot. Interesting. Along with that, one of the biggest movers was UCF. They jumped up 5 spots despite barely beating TCU. Along with that, Georgia hops up to 9 after their nice win. Arkansas up to 11. Middle Tennessee State all the way up to 17 despite barely beating UTEP. Tulane, South Alabama, Florida, USC, West Virginia, and Kentucky have all entered the top 25. So a lot of movement here towards the back with Minnesota, Virginia, Iowa, Texas, Baylor, and Texas A&M dropping out. The Texas teams continue to be really bad. Pretty much every college football team in Texas has been a disappointment. As for the Heisman race, no major movement here, although Kenna McMullen and Bartholomew Blunt have both entered the top 5, but for now the top 3 remains the same with Hutchinson, Lee, and Elijah Bryant. Jameer Jefferson wins the Defensive Player of the Week for Ohio State. No surprise, he definitely deserved it. Pretty much won him the game. And Arkansas State quarterback Trenton Mosley wins the Offensive Player of the Week. Let's now go into Week 8. Plenty of more interesting games. Big 12 play is really heating up. Plenty more SEC matchups. Tennessee, South Carolina, Arkansas, Alabama. Some of the SEC teams have some tough tests as well, so it should be interesting. We start with Middle Tennessee State. They're number 13. They haven't lost yet. I thought this could be a trap game. Rice is one of the better Group 5 schools. However, I was quick to learn this was not a trap game, and Middle Tennessee State is legitimately really good. They completely clobbered Rice really right when this game started off. Rice is playing their backup quarterback, Kelvin Daniel, who got intercepted on the first play of the game. And Middle Tennessee's offense was really good today. Junior wide receiver Nehemiah Dalton Jr. had another great game, although he suffered a broken vertebrae later in the game, which will end his season. A major loss for the Blue Raider offense, but that does not stop them from winning this game by 35 points. 45-10 is your final. Middle Tennessee State now in the top 10. Cedric Woods throws for 3 touchdowns for the Blue Raiders. Kelvin Daniel, 4 interceptions. Not great. UCF faces off against the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. This game quickly became an offensive shootout. Both offenses were really impressive today. You got to give a lot of credit to Texas Tech's redshirt freshman quarterback Yaha Marshall because he was really solid in this game against a very talented Central Florida defense. Marshall had some really good throws throughout the entire game, giving UCF everything they got from start to finish. Bay Morant, the senior quarterback at UCF, had another great game, and sophomore wide receiver Jensen Young continues to build himself up as one of the best receivers in college football this season. Jensen Young is only a true sophomore, and he was not a highly ranked high school recruit, but he has been so good this year for the Knights. And ultimately, this touchdown here by Gideon Atwater would propel UCF to a late win, 38-32. Good fight from the Red Raiders, but UCF takes it home, and they hop into the top 4. They are now the number 4 ranked team in college football, which would position themselves for a bid in the college football playoff if the season ended today. Tennessee heads down to South Carolina to take on the Gamecocks. Both of these teams lost a week ago, looking to get back on the win column. Tennessee, in specific, lost their first game of the year to Auburn and finds themselves all the way down at number 10 in the AP Top 25 poll. Sophomore quarterback Benjamin McKenzie really had a rough game against Auburn, and he's got to look good in this game. And early on, he definitely did. McKenzie was a lot more calm, a lot more poised, and a lot more accurate in the pocket. He had this great touchdown throw for true freshman wide receiver Skeeter Darlington. And throughout most of the first half, it felt like Tennessee had the momentum. It looked like they were going to be able to win the game. However, on this play right here, as Benjamin McKenzie is scrambling and trying to run for a big play, he tore his groin and will be out for likely the remainder of the season. So true freshman Roddy Jolly has to come in, and it just was not the same for the Tennessee offense. Really, their entire team lost a ton of momentum with the quarterback change, and South Carolina took advantage. Their quarterback, Marco Prince, was unbelievable in the second half. He threw for 5 touchdowns after halftime alone. Great catch there by the senior receiver, Letty Amon. Amon had 5 catches today 4 of them went for touchdowns. South Carolina's offense was so good after the halftime break, and Tennessee just looked so defeated once their starting quarterback got injured. Marco Prince was launching darts. Letty Amon was phenomenal. The speedy senior certainly improved his draft stock with his 4 touchdowns today, and their other elite senior receiver, Bryson Smith, was very good as well. Marco Prince finished with 7 total passing touchdowns on the game. Again, 5 in the second half. And Tennessee just could not respond as the Gamecocks won 49-35. Marco Prince with an unbelievable game in the air. Again, Amon was phenomenal. Sharp was great, 12 for 127. Bryson Smith was very good too. And Tennessee will be without Benjamin McKenzie for the rest of the season. Roddy Jolly was the highest-ranked quarterback in the high school recruiting class of 2022. He was a 5-star true freshman, really talented player, but Tennessee's season is pretty much ruined with their star quarterback going out and them having lost 2 games. So their playoff chances really don't look good. They're pretty much going to need to run the table with Roddy Jolly, who is a very interesting build. He's 6'7". He's got a cannon, but he's also very fast as well and very mobile outside of the pocket. Who doesn't love some good old-fashioned Mountain West football as Fresno State heads to the blue turf to take on the Boise State Broncos? Boise State had very low expectations going into the season, but they've been a very pleasant surprise, and they got themselves another very strong upset win today. Freshman quarterback Skipper Lansdale had a great game in the air, connecting here with senior receiver Zion Montgomery, who has a real shot of being a 2nd or 3rd round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Lansdale had probably his best game as a Boise State Broncos so far, and Boise State's probably going to have him as their starter for the next 3 seasons after this one. The future certainly looks bright up in Boise. The Broncos have been one of the best Group 5 teams throughout the 2010s, and they're certainly looking to keep that going here in the 2020s with a big win today over Fresno State as they take it home 38-14. Fresno State had very high expectations going into the season. They had 2 huge wins against Baylor and Iowa, and both of those teams have proven to be a little bit overrated. Certainly not the season Fresno State was hoping for. LSU, 0-7 after starting number 7 in the preseason polls, head to the Carrier Dome to take on another very disappointing team this season, the Syracuse Orange, who also had high hopes and have also, like LSU, floundered. The Tigers ran the ball very well early in the game. Senior running back Ronnie DeRugi was very impressive, and his backup, Justin West, ended up scoring twice. West was the real star of the show, surprisingly, and LSU had a big lead going into the second half. It looked like they were finally going to win their first game of the year, but the Syracuse Orange said not so fast. Junior quarterback Romano Fargnoli helped the Orange build a huge comeback. Syracuse was down 23-3 at one point, and they ended up cutting that lead all the way to 6 with a pair of touchdowns here from Fargnoli. LSU would get the ball back late, and sure enough, the Syracuse defense would come in and get the stop, and now the offense has an opportunity to come back down 20 and win the game. Fargnoli looks to pass it, and he is intercepted. C.J. Thomas Jr. with the interception, and LSU has done it. They have won a football game here in the year of 2022, beating Syracuse 23-17. Syracuse certainly has to feel like a meme here after losing to LSU, who wins their first non-conference game of the season and is now 1-7. Good for the Tigers, finally getting a win. Arkansas heads to Bryant-Denny Stadium to take on the University of Alabama. The Crimson Tide sit at the number 5 spot in the AP poll. Arkansas has been playing really well in recent weeks. I want to see if they can keep a momentum here against Alabama. And the Razorbacks played a really sharp game. Remember their running back, Cannon McMullen, last week? I said he does not like to be tackled, and that carried over to today. He still does not like to get tackled. Arkansas's offense was really impressive against a good Alabama defense. And on the other side of the coin, Alabama's junior quarterback, Bryson Byrne, really struggled to throw the football today. He was not poised or accurate as a passer. However, he was very impressive as a runner, as was really the entire Alabama offense. With their pass game being non-existent, they had to focus on running the ball, and they ran it at a very high level. Alabama's top 2 receivers finished with 1 catch for 9 yards, but it didn't matter because the offense was still really solid. This rushing touchdown by Quincy Murphy put the game in overtime at 28-28. Alabama opened up with the ball, and Bryson Byrne was intercepted by cornerback Brad Bellaford. Arkansas now have a real opportunity to win the game, and sophomore running back Cannon McMullen, as I said earlier, does not like to be tackled. He would walk it off of the end zone, and the Razorbacks upset Alabama 34-28. Arkansas, despite having 3 losses, is now ranked at number 6 in the AP poll. Again, Alabama's passing game really struggled. Arkansas continued to run it very well. Their pass game was certainly decent enough, I guess. Nova Redmond had 14 catches for 171 yards. The rest of the team, 2 catches for 10 yards, but that was still enough to win the game. Arkansas has a real opportunity to make the college football playoff despite having 3 losses. If you look at their last 4 games, they do play against number 1 Auburn, which is going to be brutal, but other than that, the rest of their schedule is pretty easy. If they go 4-0, if they do beat Auburn, they probably won't make the SEC championship, but they have a good chance to be ranked in the top 4 and sneak into the playoffs. Iowa faces off against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, a big opportunity for Rutgers to prove that they are a legitimately good team, and that they would do. Junior running back Dior Antoine is one of the most explosive players in college football, and he showed it today against the Hawkeyes, who have been one of the most disappointing teams in college football. Iowa has only won 1 game this year. This is a team who was really expected to play well, and they have completely floundered. Rutgers, on the other hand, has only lost 1 game, and it's about damn time they get some respect and hop into the top 25. They are not a top 25 team, despite being 5-1, with Johannes Franz throwing for 4 touchdowns. Dior Antoine was great as a runner and as a receiver, and Iowa's offense really struggled. Quarterback Terry Vilza was not very good today. He was solid as a runner, however. North Carolina heads down to Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta to face off against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Georgia Tech had a big upset win against Clemson a couple weeks ago, and they have another opportunity to prove themselves against a top opponent, and that they would do. The Jameer Stewart experiment was fun while it lasted, but he showed today why he's a backup quarterback and did not have a good performance for UNC. As for Georgia Tech, they ran the ball very well, and they have been without their starting running back, Micah Adams Jr., for most of the year. However, his backup, Jordan Brown, had a great performance today, and their quarterback was running it well. The backup running backs were running it well. Georgia Tech ended up scoring 59 points in this game, beating UNC 59-16. So that's 2 really big wins for Georgia Tech. They beat Clemson, and now they beat North Carolina. The Yellow Jackets hop into the number 8 spot in the AP poll, and they look like one of the best teams in the ACC, which kind of came out of nowhere. Number 1 Auburn heads to Kyle Stadium to take on the very disappointing Texas A&M Aggies. A&M started the year off strong, but they've been really disappointed the past few weeks, and things did not get much better for the Aggies. Auburn with another complete game on both sides of the ball. Sidney McDonald threw it at a very high level, and star running back Kiki Rodriguez had a hat trick today, scoring 3 touchdowns, leading Auburn to a big victory against Texas A&M. Auburn certainly has to feel prepared for their match next week in Norman, Oklahoma, against the number 2 ranked Oklahoma Sooners, the 2 best teams in college football facing off. Texas A&M quarterback Luca Franco did throw for 3 touchdowns, but A&M never really stood a chance here against a great Auburn team who keeps their number 1 ranking going into Week 9 against Oklahoma. Minnesota's looking to get back on the win column after being upset last week by Northwestern. They head to Missouri for a non-conference matchup against the Missouri Tigers. I think Missouri showed here that they were certainly the better team early and often. Senior quarterback Shiloh McDuff had another great game throwing the football, and say what you want about his lack of mobility and his projectability going into the NFL, but he can throw the ball. He is a damn good passer, and that'll go a long way as a pro quarterback, even if he's not the most athletic as a runner, as a scrambler, or somebody getting out of the pocket, but he's got arm strength, he's got accuracy, and if he can just be a little bit better under pressure, I think he can be a really good quarterback in the National Football League as Missouri wins 40-17. McDuff finishing with 5 total passing touchdowns. He, again, was just great today. Reuben Morton Sr., 208 and 3 scores. Only so much Rocket Reddick could do on the ground as Minnesota falls once again. Ohio State heads to Maryland to take on the Terrapins. I've been saying it for a while. I don't have a good feeling about this Ohio State team. They've had so many very close games that they've barely won, and this game, once again, was very close for a majority. Maryland quarterback Josh Ganymede had probably his best game of the year. He was really impressive as a passer in this game, and Maryland stood toe-to-toe with the Buckeyes from start to finish. Maryland's offense really impressed me into this game. I didn't have super high expectations for them going into the season, and although they have been disappointing for most of the year, they were great today. However, Ohio State's offense was as good. Emmanuel Cashmere had another great game on the ground. He is really playing his best football here towards the middle of the season, and on a day where Ohio State kind of struggled to throw the football, Cashmere was the best player for them offensively, and ultimately, Ohio State was able to tie the game up here on this touchdown by Cashmere, his second of the game. Maryland would get the ball back late in the game, looking to take the lead back, and that's what they would do off of a great run here, breaking tackles into the end zone. The Terps back up by 7, but again, Ohio State would respond. The Buckeyes went to overtime last week against Nebraska and won. They're hoping for overtime again as Maryland has one more chance with the ball, and quarterback Josh Ganymede would have a few really good throws on this drive, putting Maryland in field goal position to win the game. The kick is up, and it is good. The Buckeyes fall to the Terps, 31-28. I knew there was something off about this Ohio State team. I knew it. However, they should not have dropped to 16. That feels a little bit harsh, considering how far some of the other one-loss teams dropped after losses, like Tennessee only went down to 10. I thought that would have been a little bit more fair for Ohio State, but still, pat on the back. I knew there was something off about the Buckeyes. Some other scores around the country include West Virginia beating Cincinnati. USC steamrolls through Army. The Trojans are continuing to look like one of the best teams in the Big Ten. South Alabama with another win. Virginia defeats Miami, so a good win for the Cavaliers, who probably should have jumped Miami into the top 25. FSU beats NC State. Oklahoma beats Clemson. Georgia over Vanderbilt. Penn State beats Nebraska. The Cornhuskers got humbled there a little bit. Michigan over Indiana. And Pitt over Wake Forest. As for the non-conference games, BYU got killed by UConn, who's close to a top 25 spot. UCLA demolishes Washington State. Boston College beats a now 1-6 Louisville team. My Duke sleeper pick is continuing to look better and better as they beat Maryland. Texas loses to Mississippi State. Texas stinks. We should not waste any more time on them this season. Cal beats Arizona. Notre Dame barely defeats Stanford. Would have liked to have seen the Irish play a little bit better there. Navy beats UAB by a lot. The Midshipmen and Army are both really good this year. Illinois barely beats Michigan State. The middle of that Big Ten conference is very competitive. As we look at the top of the AP poll, again, another undefeated team drops out. This time it's the Buckeyes, with UCF going up to number 4, and Clemson, who didn't even play this week, moving up to number 5. Arkansas, Georgia Tech, and Middle Tennessee State now find themselves in the top 10. Tulane, who didn't play this week, jumps all the way up to 12 from 19. And of course, Ohio State goes down to 16, which again, feels like way too much of a drop-off in my opinion. There are no new teams in the top 25. It's the same 25, but in a different order. Although I feel like Virginia should have passed Miami because Virginia just beat Miami, and Virginia's been better this year than Miami. But, oh well, it is what it is. As for the Heisman list, Mosaru Lee has taken over first place, with Cade Hutchinson falling all the way to 4 despite not having a chance to play this week. Cannon McMullen finds himself in 2nd, Bartholomew Blunt is now in 3rd, and Clyde Williamson jumps up to 5th. As for the players of the week, on defense, it's Ryan Carr from Old Dominion, and on offense, it's West Virginia quarterback Jose Alvaro. This is Carr's second time winning the defensive player of the week. He won it just a couple of weeks ago in week 6, so this guy might be pretty good. He has 7 interceptions on the season. He's the second multi-defensive player of the week winner. Tony Casey from Georgia State has also won it twice. So let's go into week 9. There are some big games on the slate. None more exciting than number 1 Auburn headed to Norman to take on the number 2 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. We're going to spend some extra time on that game because it's probably the biggest game of the entire season. Let's start our week 9 slate here off at Beaver Stadium. Rutgers has a real opportunity to prove that they belong in the top 25 over a team like Penn State, and Rutgers gave them a real run for their money. Penn State's offense looked pretty solid early on. Shea Jones-Porter had another good game. Chad Johnson had his best career day in this one for the Nittany Lions as he ended up scoring twice. But Rutgers' offense was as good. Dior Antoine had another great first half performance. However, he got injured late in the first half, and I was really expecting a big drop-off from the Rutgers offense. but they didn't seem to miss a beat. The backup running back, Charles Brooks, doesn't quite have the explosiveness that Dior Antoine had, but he still made a lot of plays, and senior quarterback Johannes Franz really threw the ball well. Even without Penn State focusing on the run, Franz was as good of a passer in the second half of this game, which ultimately led Rutgers to the upset win over Penn State, and Rutgers now finds themselves in the top 25, finally, as they take the 19th spot in the top 25 poll. Penn State at 3-4 now drops out, finally. So Rutgers is going to get the respect they deserve. We'll see if USC continues to garner the respect that they have earned over the past couple of weeks as they face off against Wisconsin. The Badgers are 3-3 this year. They're 0-3 in non-conference play, but 3-0 in Big Ten play. The Badgers would keep their trend of in-conference dominance brewing today as senior quarterback Torin Kluterman threw for 3 touchdowns in this one, helping lead Wisconsin to a 41-21 win over USC. In fairness to the Trojans, they were without their All-American center, Christian Frinton Smith, and they were without one of their best offensive playmakers, with Hot Rod Pryor missing this game due to an injury as well. So that's 2 of their key offensive starters, but they still lost by 20. Wisconsin ran the ball well. Kluterman threw the ball pretty well, too. Tulane faces off against Rice here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Tulane is undefeated. Again, I could see Rice being a trap game for them. I think Rice is a pretty good team. However, Tulane is a better team. It was not a pretty game, but the Green Wave found a way to win this one 19-10 and improve their undefeated season. Tulane is not a team who's going to beat you by a lot of points. They're a gritty football team, a hard-nosed team who wins ugly, but they win. Rice's backup quarterback, Kelvin Daniel, again was really bad, throwing for 2 more interceptions today. We saw him get embarrassed last week by Middle Tennessee State, and now it happens here against Tulane. The Green Wave are now in the top 10 as they find themselves in the 9 spot in the top 25, and with a weak schedule the rest of the way, could they make a playoff bid? Okay, now this game was just absolutely drunk. So Clemson faces off against NC State. Clemson's really good. They're the number 5 team in college football. NC State, on the other hand, might be the worst team in Power 5. NC State has not won a single game this year. They've lost to teams like Nevada, San Jose State, Syracuse. I mean, they are horrible. They are legitimately the worst Power 5 team in the country. However, NC State made this game very interesting, and this was probably the craziest game of the entire season, so we're going to spend extra detail on it. NC State started off strong with a nice rushing touchdown by Isaiah Mason. However, Clemson quickly responded as Kate Hutchinson connected with Xavion Mayo to tie the game. Late in the first quarter, Isaiah Mason scored again, his second rushing touchdown of the afternoon, to put North Carolina State up 14-7. Clemson looked like they woke up in the second quarter as Kate Hutchinson threw 3 consecutive touchdown passes on back-to-back drives. That one was caught by Matthias DeRitter, the backup running back. This one was hauled in by Jordan James. And this last one was caught by Steve Brandt of the other team. It was a pick 6 to tie the game at 21. After the NC State pick 6, both teams marched down the field and scored more touchdowns to tie the game at 28. This one caught by NC State's fullback to give them the lead, and then the running back Matthias DeRitter tied it for Clemson. NC State would add a late first half field goal to put themselves ahead by 3 going into halftime. The second half was a lot more defense-oriented. Clemson outscored NC State 10-0 in the third quarter with this touchdown by Latrell McAllister and a late field goal to put them ahead by 7. It felt like the Tigers were in control and were going to avoid the upset bid as we go into the fourth quarter. Tommy Mansfield, the NC State quarterback, connected here in the back of the end zone with Cordell Bellamy to tie the game at 38. Clemson would have it back as Cade Hutchinson would look to run with it, and he would get injured. Not a serious injury, but he'll be out through the game. So the true freshman Cedric Chapman has to come in, and he would be intercepted by the middle linebacker, Axel Averon. NC State has it back, and their offense would be stopped as Isaiah Mason loses yards in the backfield. So Clemson has it back. Keep in mind it's a tie game at 38, late in the fourth quarter. Cedric Chapman moving the team down the field pretty nicely. Good run here by Matthias DeRitter. Clemson's getting very close to field goal range and an opportunity to take the lead. The kick is up, and it will doink off the crossbar and good. So Clemson takes a 3-point lead. NC State has it back. One more opportunity for the Wolfpack to complete the upset. This was a 4th down. Mansfield with a beautiful throw to Cordell Bellamy. A few plays later, Mansfield running around like a lunatic in the pocket, and he gets it to the tight end. NC State appears to be in field goal range. They would, unfortunately for them, stall out here late on the possession with a big QB sack by Clemson. So they're going to go for the field goal, 51-yard attempt to tie the game with about a minute to go, and the kick is no good. So Clemson has it back. They're up by 3. The game looks over, right? Well, not so fast. So you'd think Clemson would just kneel out the clock. They're up by 3 with a minute to go. NC State is out of timeouts. However, Clemson's head coach, Malachi Madison, decided to be a goof and kept running plays. He wanted to see more of what Cedric Chapman could do in a live game. That, or my other hypothesis, is he had Johns Vincent II, Clemson's top receiver, as an anytime touchdown scorer on his parlay bet. So Clemson's moving the ball down the field, like normal. The clock is winding down. At this point, there's under 10 seconds to go, and Clemson is still running plays. Final play of the game, intercepted by NC State. They take it to the house for a pick 6 and win the game. That's right, Clemson was winning with seconds to go, and NC State picks it off, takes it to the house, and wins their first game of the year in maybe the dumbest way I have ever seen. Clemson literally had the game won until they blew it themselves, and now Clemson's probably out of playoff contention. I mean, look at the reactions from both teams. I mean, this just says it all. Clemson's head coach, Malachi Madison, should be embarrassed right now. 28 is the guy who saved the day. This is Aurelio Johnson. He's a senior safety, first-year starter. That was his first career interception, and now he will rightfully never have to buy a drink in the state of North Carolina again. And Clemson's playoff chances look like they're dead in a game that they had won. I don't know how this happens. I've never seen a game end like this. And against NC State, of all teams, who had not won a game the entire season. I mean, you can literally not script this. It's too unbelievable. I don't even blame Cedric Chapman, the quarterback who threw the interception. This is on head coach Malachi Madison for continuing to run plays when there was no reason. To make matters worse, Clemson star running back Kobe Henderson tore his Achilles in the first half. He's done for the year and may be part of next year. Sophomore Matthias DeRitter will take over the main role in the backfield going forward. I don't know how we can match that game up. So now we're going to talk about Auburn, Oklahoma. These are the 2 best teams in college football so far. I don't think it can be argued. Oklahoma started this season off as the number 2 team in the AP poll. Auburn started the year not too far behind them at 6. Auburn is the underdog, I feel like, because Oklahoma has just dominated throughout the entire season, even though Auburn has the higher ranking, even though Auburn's resume looks a little bit stronger. Oklahoma only has Alabama left of good teams left to play after this game, whereas Auburn still has Alabama, Arkansas, and Georgia. So Auburn has 4 top 10 teams left on their schedule. We'll see what they can do here. And sure enough, this game was as good as advertised. I mean, this was a really exciting game from start to finish, which you hope for with the 2 top teams in the country. Auburn started this game off red hot, scoring 2 quick touchdowns to open up the game, taking a 14-0 lead. Sidney McDonald looked really good early on. He looked like he was in control, in command of the game, but Oklahoma would respond. Masaru Lee, the Heisman favorite, would connect here with Darion Seals to make it 14-7. However, Auburn would quickly respond as McDonald connects with a beautiful throw downfield caught by the senior wide receiver A.J. Redico, who's been one of the best playmakers in the SEC, making it 21-7. From there, the Sooners would score 21 unanswered points. Lee would go downfield with a great pass and a great one-handed catch by Devon Hall. Add on 2 field goals, a rushing touchdown by Masaru Lee, and a 2-point conversion. Oklahoma now leads 28-21. After that, both quarterbacks scored rushing touchdowns, making it 35-28. Auburn would get the ball back here in the 4th quarter, and they would look to tie the game up as McDonald goes for the end zone. It's caught by A.J. Redico, 35-35. After that, Oklahoma gets it back. Masaru Lee, downfield, caught by Montgomery for the score. Oklahoma up by 7. Now Auburn has it with the game on the line. McDonald goes downfield. It's broken up by Gabe Feldstead, and the Sooners survive. They win it 42-35. So Oklahoma narrowly defeats Auburn. The Sooners are obviously ranked number 1 now. Auburn drops to number 4. I don't feel any worse about Auburn. I thought they had a great performance here in this game. I still think Auburn right now is the second best team in the country, but Oklahoma is just too good. Masaru Lee was great, as was Sidney McDonald for Auburn. Both offenses really stood up to the test, but ultimately it was Oklahoma who ended up getting the win here, improving themselves to 8-0. Florida heads down to Everbank Field for a neutral site game against their rivals, the Georgia Bulldogs. Both of these teams do not like each other, and both of these teams are pretty good. Florida's offense was really impressive early on in this game. Junior quarterback Genesis Moon had a few great throws, including this one into the hands of Deontay Perkins for a long pass inside the 10-yard line. In my opinion, Florida's running back Elijah Bryant is the best running back in college football. He is great as a receiving back. He's also a great runner as well. And Genesis Moon would continue to play well in this game. However, Georgia has Clyde Williamson, and sometimes that's too much for the other team to stop. Clyde Williamson had another fantastic day in the air, continuing to show why he is going to be the number 1 pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Oklahoma's quarterback, Masaru Lee, has gotten all the love recently, and deservedly so, because he's been the best player on the best team in college football. However, I still think Clyde Williamson is not just the best QB in the country, but the best quarterback in this year's NFL Draft. Georgia would end up getting the job done as they take this game home 42-26. Florida is still ranked, and I think they deserve to be. Florida's only losses are against good teams, and they've been very competitive in all of those games. Georgia now ranked number 6. They still have a real shot at the playoff. Clyde Williamson, 21 of 26, 4 touchdowns. That guy is just a machine. I mean, I don't know how any defense towards the top of the rankings is going to stop him. If we get a Georgia-Oklahoma SEC championship game, that would be awesome. So Michigan State heads down to Ohio Stadium to take on the Buckeyes, who just lost their first game of the season last week against Maryland. The Buckeyes have so many close games, and this one was once again very close here against the Michigan State Spartans. Michigan State's senior quarterback Nathan Bruins was a phenomenal passer today, throwing for 5 touchdowns. Ajon Wiggins and Mason Barrow were both very good catching the football. Michigan State was without their top running back, Joshua Calico, for much of the game. Calico got injured in the first quarter, and he did not return until late, so Curtis McIntyre had to take the role as the lead rusher for most of this game. As for Ohio State, Mookie Davis, the freshman running back, was the star of the show for the Buckeyes. He outperformed their senior running back, Emmanuel Cashmere, and Mookie Davis is showing why he is going to be this team's bell cow running back for the next few seasons. This touchdown pass from Marco Brunley would put Ohio State ahead by 7 late in the game. Michigan State looking to answer as Brun scrambles down the field and he ties it up into the hands of Mason Barrow. Ohio State would then get the ball back and they would be stopped. So now Michigan State has a chance to win the game. Joshua Calico, the star running back in as he will walk it off, and the Buckeyes are upset once again, this time by Michigan State, on a very questionable touchdown call. They ruled Calico in. It's really close. Michigan State probably would have scored anyway, but 49-42 is your final. Marco Brunley did have a pretty good game in the air, but I've got to give myself a pat on the back on Ohio State. I could detect something off was about this team right from the start of the season, and they have proven the past 2 weeks that they are not a legitimate championship contender. I'm not sure if anybody in the Big Ten, quite frankly, is a legit contender, with USC losing, teams like Minnesota and Penn State not really playing well. So I've been pushing the Duke agenda for a little while. I think they're a legit sleeper. Now they have a chance to prove themselves against Miami, who still has their backup quarterback, Brandon Connor, under center. Unfortunately, my Duke agenda kind of took a hit today, as Miami was far and away the better team. Brandon Connor had multiple passing touchdowns, including this one to E.J. Twyman, and Miami ran the ball really well. Their 2 backs, Orlando Brooks and Darius Edwards II, were both very impressive in this game, and Miami ended up steamrolling the Blue Devils 48-7. I do still think I was right about Duke being a sleeper because they were projected to finish last in the ACC, and there are a lot of teams in the ACC who are worse than Duke, but they're not at the level of teams like Miami, as the Hurricanes win 48-7. Brandon Connor had a really good game in the air. I do definitely think Miami misses their starting quarterback, Scooter Young Jr., but it was good to see Connor throw the ball well. As for Duke, Justin Tucker and Ray Demerit were both pretty quiet. and their offense never really got going, and their defense obviously did not either. South Carolina heads to Missouri to take on the Tigers. South Carolina ranked number 14, Missouri ranked number 15. The Gamecocks are coming off a great win last week against Tennessee, with Marco Prince throwing 7 touchdowns in that game. He didn't quite throw 7 touchdowns today, but he was still pretty good when he was on the field. And I say that because Prince did get a little bit banged up at times throughout the game. He had to miss most of the second and third quarter. But South Carolina was able to keep this game afloat for a while. However, Missouri was marching on the doorstep the entire time. Shiloh McDuff had another pretty good game throwing the football, as did Marco Prince, again, when he was on the field. His injuries don't appear to be serious, but, I mean, he's got to stay healthy. Big stop here late in the game as it was tied up by South Carolina, so Prince is trying to drive them down the field, and as you can see, he gets a boo-boo. So the backup quarterback has to come into the game. His first play, he breaks a sack, off-balance throw, caught by Bryson Smith, who takes it to the house for a game-winning touchdown. South Carolina takes it home 27-20. A nice win for the Gamecocks, who only jump up one spot to number 13. Shiloh McDuff with another solid game in the air. Missouri ran the ball quite well today. They're a good running team, despite having a really good quarterback. Marco Prince, again, was really good when he was on the field. The backup quarterback, Barry, was not too bad. He did have an interception, but that touchdown late in the game was really, really impressive to propel South Carolina to the win over Missouri. Let's go to the final game of the day. Alabama facing off against Tennessee. It is not fun right now in Tennessee. They have lost 2 games in a row. Their starting quarterback is probably out for the year. And although true freshman Roddy Jolly is a very talented young quarterback, again, it feels like Tennessee's hopes and dreams were put into a rocket launcher when McKenzie got hurt, and those hopes and dreams have been completely launched away from existence. Bryson Byrne did not have a very good day throwing the football, minus this touchdown pass in the first quarter. But again, Byrne ran the ball really well, and the running backs for Alabama were really good too. Byrne has had 2 consecutive weeks where he has struggled to throw the football, but today it just did not matter because Alabama was the better team at the line of scrimmage. Kyle McCloskey, the junior running back, was their lead rusher today. He was very good. Alabama wins 34-7. Bad loss for Tennessee. Bad day for them all around. They went 0-3 in today's episode. They're still in the top 25. Alabama, meanwhile, stays at 10, despite a bad performance throwing the ball from Bryson Byrne. Alabama's 2 top receivers today, Jaden Wilson-Miller and Khalil Hassan, both did not catch a single pass. And this is coming off a game last week where the 2 of them combined for 1 catch. So that'll wrap up Week 9. A lot of crazy stuff. The Oklahoma-Auburn game was very fun. The Clemson game was just completely drunk. As for the other top 25 stuff, Middle Tennessee State, West Virginia, Arkansas, all add to the win column, as does UCF. They are now the number 3 ranked team in college football. South Alabama barely beats Texas State. Florida State beats Louisville as expected. Michigan continues their win streak over Illinois. And Syracuse upsets Pitt. North Carolina beats Virginia Tech. Kentucky beats Mississippi State. Baylor over Kansas State. Georgia Tech over Virginia. As for some of the other games, Minnesota rebounds with a nice win over Nevada. Iowa rebounds with a win over Northwestern, just their second of the year. Utah gets pummeled by Idaho. Make it make sense. Maryland loses to Indiana after beating Ohio State last week. Oregon barely defeats Arizona State 27-24. The Ducks continue to be one of the more disappointing teams in the league. Texas A&M only beats FCS Northwest by 14. UCLA defeats Purdue. LSU wins again. They beat Vanderbilt 52-7. Texas is back on the win column. They beat TCU by just 7 points, continuing to show that they are frauds. But good one, I guess, for the Longhorns. As we look at the top 25, the 3 undefeated teams at the top, Oklahoma, Florida State, and UCF. Auburn drops to 4. Arkansas at 5 I find really interesting. They've lost 3 games, but as I said earlier, they have a legitimate shot at the college football playoff. As for some other major movement, Clemson drops to 18. With their coaching, they don't even belong in the top 25. Rutgers and Baylor hop in, with USC and Penn State dropping out. As for the Heisman watch, not too much change at the top. However, Clyde Williamson and Kate Hutchinson have swapped spots, so Clyde is now in 4th and Hutchinson is now in 5th. As for the players of the week, Jacob Wilson, cornerback out of UConn on defense, and Romano Fargnoli on offense. He's finally playing well. Wilson had 3 interceptions today, the first 3 of his career, so I guess that's pretty cool. Next episode, we've got weeks 10, 11, and 12. We're starting to get closer towards the end of the season. A lot of big games. I'm excited to see if teams like UCF and Middle Tennessee State, if they can prove that they're for real. We'll see if 3-loss Arkansas actually has a real opportunity at the playoffs. We'll see if some of these other SEC teams like Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama can get back towards the top. And we'll see if anybody can beat Oklahoma, because I don't know if that's going to happen. Auburn, Georgia in Week 11 is a game I'm very excited about. Both of those two teams need to win that game if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. All right, that's going to wrap up the video. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I know it was a long one, but we had a lot of stuff to get through. We had some crazy games today. Cough, Clemson, NC State. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.